Hello everyone, I'm Alex, and today I bring you the powerful and emotional journey of Rebecca Sullivan, a story of betrayal, resilience, and redemption. Sometimes, those we trust the most are the ones who hurt us the deepest, but strength is found in how we rise again. Rebecca's story is more than just a tale of revenge, it's about reclaiming self-worth, finding courage, and proving that even after the deepest betrayals, a new beginning is always possible. This is a story that will touch your heart, remind you of the power of perseverance, and inspire you to never settle for less than you deserve. So sit back, stay with me until the end, and let's dive into Rebecca's journey of breaking free and rebuilding a life on her own terms. The aroma of freshly brewed coffee filled the pristine kitchen of Rebecca Sullivan's luxurious Miami penthouse. The early morning light reflected off the sleek marble countertops as she carefully arranged breakfast: Greek yogurt with honey, slices of ripe mango, and a cup of dark roast coffee, just the way Ethan liked it. She smoothed down her tailored blouse and took a deep breath before turning to see her husband enter, adjusting the cuffs of his crisp white shirt. Ethan Sullivan was the epitome of success, tall, confident, and effortlessly polished. His Hermes tie was perfectly knotted, and the Rolex on his wrist gleamed as he checked the time. "Breakfast is ready," she said, placing his coffee in front of him. He barely looked up. "Thanks. Tight schedule today. Early meetings, dinner with a client tonight." Rebecca nodded, suppressing a sigh. Lately, these rushed mornings had become routine. Ethan was always too busy. But she told herself it was normal, this was the price of success. She forced a smile. "That's okay. I'll probably be working late, too." Ethan gave a nonchalant nod before taking a sip of his coffee, his attention already shifting to the phone in his hand. A habit he never seemed to break. She watched him for a moment, searching for the warmth that had once been there. They had built a life together, a perfect one, at least from the outside. A successful marriage, high-powered careers, the respect of Miami's elite. They attended charity galas, took weekend trips to the Hamptons, and never let the cracks in their marriage show. Because there were no cracks. At least, that's what Rebecca told herself. Underscore 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 underscore. A family bound by expectations, not love. If work kept Ethan occupied during the week, family consumed their weekends. Sunday evenings meant dinner at her parents' estate, an extravagant affair that showcased the Pearson family's wealth and legacy. The dining table was always set with antique china, and the chandelier cast a golden glow over the perfectly curated evening. "Rebecca, you've been looking tired lately," her mother, Eleanor, observed one evening, delicately cutting into her filet mignon. "Is work wearing you down?" Rebecca smiled, brushing off the concern. "Just busy. This quarter has been intense." "You should learn to balance things better," Olivia chimed in, her tone light but laced with something sharper. Rebecca glanced at her younger sister, who sat across the table, effortlessly radiant in a designer dress. Olivia Pearson had always known how to command attention. She was a rising star in Miami's luxury real estate scene, a woman who curated her life like an Instagram influencer, polished, enviable, and utterly detached from reality. "Not everyone has the luxury of setting their own schedule, Olivia," Rebecca replied evenly. Olivia smirked but said nothing. Their father, Richard, leaned back in his chair, swirling his wine. "In my day, trust was everything," he said, launching into yet another story about high-stakes deals and old money alliances. Rebecca had heard this speech 100 times. Trust, appearances, and loyalty. That's what keeps everything intact, her mother added, nodding approvingly. Rebecca nodded along, as she always did. This was their world, a world where the right last name, the right connections, and the illusion of perfection meant everything. And she had never questioned it. Until now. Underscore 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 underscore. Doubt creeps in. That night, as she lay in bed beside Ethan, she found herself staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. The feeling had started weeks ago, a nagging sense that something was off. Ethan had been coming home later and later. He had stopped making eye contact when he spoke to her. His phone never left his side, and his explanations for his absences had become vague, rehearsed. But doubt had no place in their marriage. Rebecca had always believed that if you looked the other way, if you kept smiling, if you upheld the image of the perfect life, then it would stay perfect. But for the first time, she wasn't so sure. She rolled over, watching Ethan's sleeping form. His face was calm, relaxed, as if he had nothing to hide. Maybe she was imagining things. Maybe she was just overworked, as her mother had suggested. She exhaled, trying to shake the unease. Tomorrow was just another day. Another breakfast, another routine. Everything was fine. It had to be. What Rebecca didn't know was that within days, her entire world would come crashing down. Rebecca Sullivan had always trusted in the solidity of her life. A successful career, a stable marriage, a family that, despite its flaws, had always stood together. She had spent years building this reality, convincing herself that hard work and loyalty would keep everything intact. That illusion shattered in a single moment. It started with something small. Almost insignificant. She was in the middle of a high-stakes client meeting, running through financial projections, when an unexpected wave of nausea hit her. The room blurred for a second, her hands gripping the edge of the conference table. She forced herself to steady her breath, willing the moment to pass. Afterward, as she gathered her files, her assistant, Laura, hesitated before speaking. "Rebecca, you don't look well. Maybe you should see a doctor." Rebecca waved off the concern at first, attributing it to stress. But the next morning, when the same nausea struck again, stronger, more persistent, she made the appointment. A few days later, sitting in the doctor's office, she barely registered the soft hum of conversation outside the room. Her focus was on the woman in the white coat sitting across from her. "Mrs. Sullivan, congratulations. You're pregnant." The words hung in the air. Pregnant. For a moment, Rebecca could only stare, the reality sinking in. She had never imagined this moment happening like this, without Ethan by her side, without celebration, without a shared look of excitement. But even without him there, warmth spread through her chest. A baby. Their baby. The first thing she wanted to do was tell Ethan. Still in a daze, she pulled out her phone and dialed his number. 1 ring. 2 rings. 3. Voicemail. She frowned but reassured herself. Ethan was always in meetings. He would call back. She sent a message instead. "Call me when you get a chance. I have something important to tell you." Hours passed. No response. By evening, she tried again. Another call, another voicemail. Her stomach twisted with unease. The following afternoon, she found herself back at the hospital for follow-up tests. The nausea had worsened, and the doctor wanted to rule out complications. As she waited for her results, she absently flipped through a magazine, but the words blurred together. A television mounted in the corner played a travel special, a segment about luxury cruises. It was background noise until a familiar voice pulled her attention to the screen. The camera panned across the deck of a magnificent cruise ship, gliding over turquoise waters. A well-dressed couple stood near the railing, champagne flutes in hand, smiling as the host spoke. Rebecca's breath caught. Ethan. Standing in his tailored suit, relaxed in a way he never was at home. And beside him, clinging to his arm with an all-too-familiar laugh, Olivia. Rebecca's world tilted. Her heart pounded as her mind tried to catch up with what her eyes were seeing. Behind them, her parents. Richard and Eleanor Pearson, seated at an outdoor dining area, sipping champagne as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. The camera cut to a brief interview. Olivia beamed, speaking animatedly about how much she loved traveling, how important it was to make time for family. "It's going to be such a lovely vacation." Rebecca barely registered the words. Her fingers turned ice-cold as she reached for her phone, unlocking the banking app with trembling hands. The numbers hit her like a physical blow. Thousands withdrawn. Luxury hotel stays. Yacht rentals. Exclusive resort charges. 6 months' worth of hidden transactions. She stared at the screen, her pulse hammering. This couldn't be real. Her mind raced, connecting the dots. Ethan's late nights. His vague explanations. The way her parents had so casually mentioned taking a small trip. Olivia's smug smiles at dinner, the way she had subtly belittled Rebecca, acting as if she knew something Rebecca didn't. She had been blind. She had been a fool. With shaking fingers, she dialed Ethan's number. This time, he answered. "What is it, Rebecca?" His voice was smooth, composed, like he wasn't standing on the deck of a cruise ship in the middle of the ocean. Rebecca forced her voice to stay even. "Where are you?" "At the office," he said, without hesitation. "Big client meeting." Rebecca closed her eyes for a moment, listening. Through the phone, she could hear faint laughter. Glasses clinking. The unmistakable sound of ocean waves against the hull of a ship. For a moment, she felt suspended in time. Then something inside her, something raw, something furious, snapped into place. She took a slow breath, as if absorbing the final blow. "Enjoy your trip." She hung up before he could respond. The hospital room was silent except for the steady beep of a heart monitor in the hallway. The travel segment continued playing, showing other passengers enjoying their luxury vacation. People like Ethan. Like Olivia. Like her parents. Rebecca sat still, her hands folded over her stomach. They had planned this for months. They had deceived her completely. They had taken her loyalty, her trust, and twisted it into something ugly. Her hands no longer trembled. Instead, a quiet, deadly calm settled over her. She reached for her phone again. But this time, she wasn't calling Ethan. She was calling a lawyer. Rebecca stood and walked to the window, looking down at the Miami skyline. In the distance, the port where the cruise ships docked gleamed under the afternoon sun. Somewhere out there, her so-called family was still celebrating. But not for long. This ends now. Rebecca Sullivan had always believed that trust was the foundation of everything. But trust had shattered the moment she saw her husband, Ethan, and her sister, Olivia, on that cruise ship. The moment she realized that her parents had known and participated in the deception. They had lied to her face, stolen from her, and celebrated it like a family victory. But Rebecca was not the kind of woman who would break down and let betrayal consume her. No. She would take that betrayal and turn it into power. That night, she sat alone in the penthouse she had once called home, staring at the city lights stretching beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows. Everything inside this space, the designer furniture, the expensive paintings, the perfectly curated life, felt false now. This was not a home. It was a prison built on lies. Taking a deep breath, she sat at her desk, opened her laptop, and began her investigation. Rebecca had spent years trusting Ethan, but she had also spent years observing him. She knew his habits, his routines, and more importantly, his weaknesses. Her first move was accessing Olivia's private social media. Olivia, always desperate to flaunt her lifestyle, had a locked Instagram account where she posted moments she didn't want the public to see. Rebecca did not need to hack anything, she already knew someone who had access. Olivia's ex-boyfriend, Daniel, had once confided in Rebecca about how Olivia had used him, drained his finances, and discarded him when he was no longer useful. He had no love left for her. A simple message to him, reminding him of everything Olivia had done, and within minutes, he sent her the login credentials. What Rebecca found made her blood run cold. Photo after photo, Olivia lounging on a yacht, sipping champagne in a private cabana, posing in expensive jewelry she had no means of affording on her own. And there, in the background of many of those pictures, was Ethan. Some posts dated back 6 months. They had been doing this for half a year, right under her nose. But it wasn't just the images. The captions. The comments. Conversations between Olivia and their mother, Eleanor, painted an even darker picture. Make sure Rebecca never finds out. She's been so exhausted lately, she won't notice anything. Ethan says he has everything handled. Just keep her busy with work. Rebecca clenched her fists. They had orchestrated this together. The betrayal was not just emotional, it was financial. Rebecca logged into their joint bank account and reviewed every transaction for the past 6 months. There it was. First-class flights to Europe, luxury resorts, high-end restaurants, all under expenses disguised as business trips. Transfers from their joint savings account to an offshore account in Ethan's name. Large wire transfers to Olivia's real estate business, money that had clearly come from her father's retirement fund. Her heart pounded as she cross-checked financial records. Her father, Richard Pearson, had pulled out a significant amount of his savings, funneling it into Olivia's company. But instead of going into legitimate real estate projects, the money had vanished into Ethan's investment accounts. This was fraud. It was no longer just about a broken marriage. It was criminal. Rebecca's hands were steady as she typed in the password to Ethan's work email. She knew it. He had always been arrogant, never believing he needed to change his passwords. She had seen him type it in once, on a night when he had too much whiskey and fell asleep at his desk. At the time, she had laughed at how predictable he was. Now, that carelessness was going to cost him everything. Her breath hitched as she scrolled through emails. Expense reports labeled as client meetings, with receipts from luxury hotels and private clubs. Reimbursements for high-end jewelry purchases, charged to his corporate card. Messages to company accountants discussing ways to classify personal vacations as business expenses. This was not just misconduct. This was corporate fraud. Rebecca's pulse steadied. She had everything she needed. One by one, she compiled it all. Screenshots of Olivia's social media posts. Bank statements showing fraudulent transactions. Financial records tying her father's money to Ethan's hidden investments. Emails proving corporate embezzlement. She backed up everything to multiple locations, encrypted cloud storage, a USB drive hidden in her office, and a hard copy filed away. Then, she picked up her phone. "Mrs. Sullivan, how can we help you?" The lawyer's voice was calm, professional. "I want to file for divorce," she said. "And I want to ensure my husband and his accomplices face the full consequences of what they've done." There was a pause before the lawyer responded. "Based on the information you've sent, we can move aggressively. Ethan's financial misconduct is significant. His company will not protect him once we expose this." Rebecca's lips curled into a slow, cold smile. "Then let's get started." As the first rays of morning sunlight crept through the penthouse windows, Rebecca stood by the glass, looking down at Miami. In the distance, she could see the cruise ships docked at the port. Her so-called family was still out there, enjoying the lavish life they had stolen. But they had made one fatal mistake. They had underestimated her. Rebecca exhaled slowly, placing a protective hand over her stomach. Don't worry, baby. Mommy's got this. Then, she made one last call. Make the first move. Let's begin. The morning sun cast golden streaks over Miami's skyline, bathing the city in a deceptive warmth. But for Rebecca Sullivan, there was no warmth left, not for the people who had betrayed her. She stood by the window of her penthouse, sipping her coffee as the final pieces of her plan fell into place. Her so-called family was returning today. They had spent the last week reveling in luxury, blissfully unaware that their world was about to collapse. Today, she would strike. She wasn't just going to expose them. She was going to dismantle everything they had built on deception. 9 a.m., the public exposé. Rebecca sat at her desk, her laptop open, the cursor blinking over a carefully crafted post. She took a steady breath before typing. To my beloved family, thank you for the wonderful memories. Did you enjoy your trip? Attached were photos from Olivia's private social media, ones she had saved days ago. Ethan and Olivia on the cruise ship deck, champagne flutes in hand. Her parents smiling, basking in the glow of their stolen wealth. A perfect picture of betrayal. Her finger hovered over the post button. Then, without hesitation, she pressed it. Within seconds, notifications began flooding in. A storm was coming. 9:30 a.m., the corporate takedown. Rebecca turned to her second target, Ethan's career. She logged into a secure email account and sent the damning evidence to his firm's board of directors. The message was direct and lethal. Attached are financial records detailing fraudulent expense reports and misuse of company funds by Ethan Sullivan, vice president. Given the severity of these violations, immediate investigation is recommended. The email had every necessary document. Transactions proving Ethan had funneled company money into personal expenses. Evidence that he had fabricated business trips. Screenshots of his emails discussing financial manipulation. She hit send. Then, she sat back and waited. 10 a.m., legal warfare. Her lawyer called right on time. Rebecca, we have officially filed the divorce papers. Given the financial misconduct, we are demanding full asset division in your favor. Good. And the whistleblower report, she asked calmly. Already in motion. Ethan's company will have no choice but to respond swiftly. She nodded, her voice unwavering. Keep me updated. I want nothing left for him. Her lawyer hesitated. Rebecca, once we do this, there's no turning back. She let out a breath, steady and deliberate. My life already reached that point long ago. 11 a.m., the social fallout. The internet was ablaze. Friends, acquaintances, and business partners flooded her with messages, some offering support, others in shock. Miami's social circles erupted with whispers. The Pearson family name, once respected, was now a scandal. Ethan's firm released a statement, confirming an internal investigation into financial misconduct. Rebecca's phone buzzed with incoming calls. Ethan. Olivia. Her mother. She ignored every single one. 2 p.m., the first call. Her phone rang again. She let it ring twice before answering. Rebecca, what the hell did you do? Ethan's voice was sharp, panic creeping into his usually controlled tone. She leaned back, calm. What's what, Ethan? You destroyed me, he seethed. She let a beat of silence pass. Then, with chilling clarity, she replied. No, Ethan. You did that yourself. We need to talk about this. No. We don't. Everything will be handled through the lawyers. Enjoy the spotlight. She hung up. For the first time in years, she felt free. 3 p.m., Olivia's plea. A new message appeared. Olivia, Rebecca, please. I made a mistake. I was jealous, okay? I never meant to hurt you. Please, take the post down. People are turning against me. I'm losing everything. Rebecca stared at the message. This was the same woman who had stolen from her, laughed at her behind her back, and conspired with Ethan. The same sister who had once looked her in the eye and said, "You take life too seriously, Rebecca." Now, she was begging. Rebecca calmly deleted the message. She didn't need to respond. 5 p.m., the final blow. By evening, Ethan had been officially suspended from his firm. Financial analysts speculated about the depth of the scandal, wondering if criminal charges would follow. Meanwhile, Olivia's real estate license was revoked. Several high-profile clients had cancelled their contracts. As for her parents, the once esteemed Richard and Eleanor Pearson were now shunned from Miami's elite. Their social circle abandoned them, their carefully curated reputation reduced to dust. No more invitations. No more power. They had chosen their side. Now, they would suffer the consequences. 10 p.m., the aftermath. Rebecca poured herself a glass of wine and stepped onto the balcony. The cruise ship had docked earlier that day. Somewhere out there, Ethan, Olivia, and her parents were scrambling to contain the damage, watching their lives crumble in real time. Her phone buzzed again. A final text from Ethan. "You ruined us." She smirked, typing her last message to him. "You all taught me the true meaning of family." Then, she turned off her phone. Outside, Miami's skyline twinkled, but for the first time, she no longer felt like she belonged to this city. Her story here was over. And she was ready for what came next. The storm had passed, and Rebecca Sullivan stood in the ruins of the life she had once cherished. But she was not broken. She had survived. The people who had betrayed her, Ethan, Olivia, her parents, were now facing the consequences of their own choices. Ethan had lost his job, Olivia's career was in shambles, and their parents had been exiled from Miami's high society. The world they had built on deception had collapsed beneath them. But Rebecca did not linger in the wreckage. She had a new life to build. Rebecca knew she could not stay. Every street, every familiar place carried the weight of betrayal. The penthouse she had once called home felt cold and empty, a monument to a life that no longer existed. She needed a fresh start, somewhere far from the whispers, the scandal, and the ghosts of her past. Seattle. A city known for its rain, its quiet strength, and its promise of renewal. A place where no one knew her as Ethan Sullivan's wife, Olivia Pearson's sister, or Richard and Eleanor's daughter. Here, she could just be Rebecca. She sold the penthouse, liquidated the remaining joint assets, and left Miami behind. She took nothing from that life except her determination, her independence, and the tiny life growing inside her. Starting over was not easy. At first, Seattle felt unfamiliar, even lonely. She had traded glitzy Miami nights for gray skies and quiet mornings, but she had no regrets. She channeled every ounce of her energy into Sullivan Financial Consulting, her own independent firm. She specialized in helping women, especially single mothers, take control of their finances. She knew firsthand what it was like to feel powerless, and she vowed that no woman under her guidance would ever experience that again. The first few months were tough. Late nights, endless networking, working tirelessly to establish credibility in a new city. But Rebecca was relentless. And soon, the clients came. Women who had been trapped in controlling marriages. Women who had been left with nothing. Women who had been convinced they could never stand on their own. Rebecca helped them reclaim their futures. And in doing so, she reclaimed her own. But she did not stop there. She used part of her settlement to launch the New Chapter Initiative, a nonprofit providing financial and legal resources for women escaping financial abuse. She met women whose stories mirrored her own, and for the first time, she realized that her pain had not been in vain. Every woman she helped, every story she heard, reminded her that she had turned her betrayal into something powerful. Despite her growing success, nothing in Rebecca's life mattered more than Emma. 3 months old, her daughter was the light that guided her forward. Rebecca had feared motherhood would feel isolating, that without a traditional family structure, she would struggle. But when she held Emma in her arms, she realized she had everything she needed. She designed her office to include a soundproof nursery, ensuring she never had to choose between her career and her daughter. She balanced board meetings with lullabies, late-night financial reports with early morning feedings. It was not easy. But it was hers. For the first time in years, Rebecca was living on her own terms. One evening, Rebecca took Emma for a walk through a small park near her office. The Seattle air was crisp, the sky painted with soft hues of twilight. As she pushed the stroller along the path, she spotted a familiar figure sitting on a bench, Dr. Nathan Carter. He looked up from his book and smiled. "Fancy seeing you here," he said, standing. Rebecca smiled back. "Emma insists on her evening strolls." Nathan leaned down, glancing at the baby in the stroller. "And how is my favorite little patient today?" Emma kicked her legs in excitement, cooing. "I think that's a good sign," Nathan chuckled. They fell into easy conversation. It had become a routine, running into each other at the park, at Emma's checkups, at the coffee shop near her office. And tonight, as the conversation stretched longer than usual, Rebecca felt something she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. Something warm. Something light. Then, after a pause, Nathan hesitated. "I know you have a lot on your plate," he said slowly, "but if you ever feel like taking a break from saving the world, maybe we could have dinner sometime." Rebecca hesitated. For so long, she had sworn off trust. Sworn off love. Sworn off risking her heart again. But Nathan was not Ethan. He had never tried to control her. Never made her feel small. Never asked for more than she was willing to give. She glanced down at Emma, then back at him. "Dinner sounds nice," she said softly. Nathan smiled, but he did not push. "Whenever you're ready." And for the first time in a long time, she was. That night, as Rebecca stood in her apartment, she looked around the home she had created. There were no traces of the past. No ghosts of Ethan. No shadows of betrayal. Only warmth. Only peace. She picked up Emma and held her close, feeling the steady heartbeat of the life she had fought so hard to protect. "We did it, baby," she whispered. "We're free." Outside, the Seattle skyline stretched before her, full of possibilities. Rebecca Sullivan had once believed that family was everything. That love and trust could withstand anything. Now, she knew better. She had built a new life. One that belonged to her, and only her. And for the first time in years, she was truly happy. The past was behind her. For too long, Rebecca Sullivan had lived in a world built on illusions. A loving husband who had deceived her. A family that had betrayed her. A life that had looked perfect from the outside but had been crumbling from within. But that world was gone now. 1 year had passed since she left Miami. 1 year since she chose herself. Now, standing in her office overlooking Puget Sound, Rebecca felt something she had once thought impossible: peace. The office of Sullivan Financial Consulting was buzzing with energy. Through the glass walls, Rebecca could see her small but dedicated team preparing for the morning's meeting. She glanced at her desk, where 2 framed photos sat side by side. One was of Emma, now a bright-eyed toddler who filled Rebecca's world with laughter. The other was a group photo from the New Chapter Initiative, her nonprofit helping women gain financial independence. Both were reminders of why she had fought so hard to rebuild her life. Her assistant knocked gently on the door. "Ms. Sullivan, the new client is here." Rebecca straightened. "Send her in." A woman in her mid-30s entered, clutching a folder tightly in her hands. There was hesitation in her eyes, the same fear Rebecca had once felt. "I don't know where to start," the woman admitted. "My husband controls everything, our money, my accounts, even the house. I feel trapped." Rebecca met her gaze, steady and reassuring. "You are not trapped," she said. "And you are not alone. We will figure this out together." The woman let out a breath, her grip on the folder loosening just slightly. Moments like this reminded Rebecca why she had fought so hard. Not just for herself, but for others who needed to know they could fight too. That evening, Rebecca pushed Emma's stroller through the park, letting the crisp Seattle air wash over them. It had become their little tradition, the evening walks, the quiet moments together before bedtime. Emma babbled happily, reaching for the sky as if trying to catch the last light of the day. As Rebecca turned a corner, she spotted Dr. Nathan Carter sitting on a nearby bench. He looked up from his book and smiled. "Fancy seeing you here," he said, standing as she approached. Rebecca laughed lightly. "Emma insists on her evening strolls. I just follow orders." Nathan leaned down, looking at the baby. "And how is my favorite little troublemaker today?" Emma giggled, reaching for him. Rebecca watched as Nathan gently took her tiny hand, his expression warm. "She likes you," Rebecca said. "She has good taste," Nathan teased. They walked together for a while, their conversation as easy as ever. And then, as they reached the end of the path, Nathan hesitated. "I know you have a lot on your plate," he said carefully, "but if you ever want to take a break from being a superhero, maybe we could have dinner sometime." Rebecca smiled, considering. She had spent so long keeping people at a distance. She had told herself she did not need love, that she did not want it. But Nathan had never rushed her. He had simply been there. She glanced down at Emma, then back at him. "Dinner sounds nice," she finally said. Nathan's smile widened, but he did not push. "Whenever you are ready." For the first time in a long time, Rebecca was ready. Later that night, as Rebecca stood by her apartment window, she glanced at the Miami newspaper left on her desk. She had not thought about her past in months. But now, curiosity drew her eyes to the headline. "Former investment banker Ethan Sullivan sentenced to prison for financial fraud." She skimmed the article. 10 years. His crimes had caught up to him, just as she knew they would. Flipping the page, she found another familiar name. Olivia Pearson declares bankruptcy after career collapse. Her sister had burned through what little money she had left. Her high society lifestyle had vanished. There were no more luxury vacations, no designer dresses, no admiring glances. And as for her parents, they had disappeared from Miami's elite, shunned by the very people they once sought to impress. Rebecca closed the newspaper. No satisfaction. No bitterness. Just closure. Their downfall had nothing to do with her anymore. She had already won. She tossed the paper into the trash and turned toward the nursery, where Emma slept soundly. Rebecca leaned down and kissed her daughter's forehead. "We did it, baby," she whispered. "We are free." Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered. A new city. A new life. A new beginning. Rebecca Sullivan had once believed that family was everything. That love and trust could withstand anything. Now, she knew better. She had built a life of her own. One that belonged to her and her daughter. And for the first time in years, she was truly happy. Rebecca's journey is a powerful reminder that trust, once broken, cannot be blindly restored. Betrayal can come from those closest to us, but strength is found in how we rise from it. Her story teaches us that self-worth is not tied to others' approval, and true family is built on love and loyalty, not blood or social ties. In today's world, where appearances often mask deception, it is crucial to listen to our instincts, protect our financial independence, and never allow others to define our worth. Rebecca's resilience proves that even after the deepest betrayals, we can rebuild stronger, wiser, and on our own terms. Above all, this story highlights the importance of choosing ourselves, finding the courage to walk away, and embracing new beginnings with strength and dignity.